We start with the Delta variant, and it's now fueling a summer spike in coronavirus cases and, more importantly, hospitalizations.
Yeah, the more contagious strain is now making up nearly 60% of new cases nationwide, with more unvaccinated people showing up at hospitals. Speaking of vaccinations, they are lagging, down 54% from just last week. Experts are warning without high vaccination numbers, the Delta variant is here to stay.
The Delta variant is going to move its way through the country over the course of August and September, maybe into October. Unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. It's going to get worse before it gets better in terms of the spread of this infection right now.
NBC News health and medical reporter Erica Edwards joins us now. So, Erica, hospitals, especially in the South, are dealing with an increase in patients. What's the latest there?
Hey, Joe, good morning. You know, you're going to see surges anywhere you have low levels of vaccination. Hospitalizations in Mississippi, for example, have doubled since July 4th. That state has one of the lowest vaccination rates in the country at just about 33%. Also worrisome there, the state's health officer said that 7 children are in the ICU with COVID-19. 2 of those children are on ventilators. Now, cases are also surging in places like Arkansas. It has a vaccination rate of just about 35%. In neighboring Missouri, cases are also surging. Their vaccination rate is at less than 40%. Health officials and nurses there are urging people who still have questions about the vaccine to talk with their doctors.
If you're able to get vaccinated, you know, ask the questions that you have to a legitimate source so that you can be fully educated.
I have not taken care of a fully vaccinated patient that's been on a ventilator.
Now, overall, 59% of adults here in the U.S. have been fully vaccinated. Joe, back to you.
So, Erica, I know you have some new reporting this morning on how the vaccines could prevent people from becoming COVID long haulers. Those are people who deal with the effects weeks, even months after first getting sick. What did you learn?
Yeah, so we know that vaccinations can help reduce the risk of becoming severely ill, getting into the hospital, or even dying from COVID-19. That means even if you're infected after you're fully vaccinated, your illness is much more likely to be mild. But increasingly, I'm hearing from doctors nationwide that they are just not seeing cases of long COVID pop up following vaccination. Now, this is all anecdotal so far, but there is some preliminary data backing it up. Researchers at Washington University in St. Louis have been scouring databases, comparing millions of cases. And so far, their research is suggesting that the risk for becoming a long hauler following vaccination is very low. Now, there was one caveat I want to bring up. It could be that it's just too soon to recognize these cases because we really just started rolling out the vaccines a few months ago. Joe?
And Erica, I have to ask you about my beat this week, the Olivia Rodrigo beat, the Gen Z pop star. She was at the White House yesterday as part of a push to boost vaccinations, especially for younger people. What can you tell us about her visit?
Yeah, that's right. The singer-songwriter was at the White House yesterday to record some videos encouraging young people to get the shots. Those videos will later be released on her social media channels. Joe, I know that you follow all of those. Now, while she was there, she stopped briefly to talk with reporters. Here she is.
I am beyond honored and humbled to be here today to help spread the message about the importance of youth vaccination. I'm in awe of the work President Biden and Dr. Fauci have done and was happy to help lend my support to this important initiative.
Joe, teens and young people across the U.S. have some of the lowest vaccination rates in the country. Back to you.
Yeah, and I'm not the only follower. More than 28 million followers she has, so quite a reach there. Erica, thanks so much.
President Biden is pushing forward with Senate Democrats' $3.5 trillion infrastructure plan, meeting with that group on Capitol Hill yesterday to talk about how to move forward. Democrats are hoping to use the budget process to avoid a filibuster, as we've seen before, and therefore pass it without needing bipartisan support. President Biden and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer seem confident about the bill on their way into that meeting.
This is my homecoming. We're going to get this done. We are getting this done.
NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joins us now. Mike, they say they are getting it done, but these meetings, these negotiations have been going on for months, even with Republicans, of course, for a period of time. So explain where we're at right now. What are the two paths that the Senate is pursuing, and what's in this $3.5 trillion version of a plan?
Well, Savannah, certainly this was a big step forward for the White House as they move on this dual-track strategy. You still have, though it's important to note, no final legislative text has been written for either one of these two major proposals, but we know the broad contours of it. You have roughly $579 billion in that bipartisan package on traditional infrastructure, roads, bridges, expanding broadband access, as well as replacing water pipelines across the country. That $3.5 trillion, likely Democrats alone package has much more significant Democratic priorities, like expanding Medicare benefits to include dental and vision benefits. You have other significant climate provisions, which have been a big priority. Now, the priority here, of course, for the White House is making sure both of these run on time, because remember, he said he needs to sign both at the same time.
Absolutely. And now, Mike, we also know that President Biden had this meeting with governors and mayors at the White House. Of course, the types of officials that would be quite impacted by an infrastructure plan. And this came up. What did he say about it?
Yeah, this is a meeting yesterday which shows you the dual strategies that the president is pursuing, meeting behind closed doors with Democrats on a piece of legislation that is going to only pass with Democrat support, but then meeting with a group of Republicans and Democrats to push this bipartisan package. But it was during that meeting where he talked about his meeting with the Senate Democrats. Take a listen.
I went up and spoke to the Democratic caucus today, and we put together a plan that dealt with infrastructure. And it's a bipartisan plan. I think we're in good shape. There may be some slight adjustments of the pay for it, and that's going to get down to what the Congress wants to do. I've laid out how I think we pay for it, and we have an agreement. We have an agreement. There may be slight changes. I'm not sure what may happen, exactly how, but it's going to be paid for, and that's what we're going to do.
And today, the president is going to be speaking about a temporary benefit that he hopes to make at least a little bit more permanent, that expansion of the child tax credit later today.
Now, Mike, all right, the big question here, though, is how do any of these plans, any of these different paths that the president is pursuing, really get the support that it needs? I mean, it's unlikely to get any Republican support, but there are members of his own party that have been wild cards. Does the president have the full support of the Democrats? You know, there's a few specifically that I'm asking about.
That's right. Well, we heard yesterday from the leading progressives in the party, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, really expressing their strong support for this. What we have not heard as robustly is Joe Manchin, is Kirsten Sinema, those moderates in the caucus. But remember, when the president passed that $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill in March, we were waiting up until the last second to know how they were going to vote. I expect the same will probably happen with this one as well, Savannah.
All right, Mike Memoli, as always, thank you for your reporting. Good to have you.
Texas Democrats are still making the rounds on Capitol Hill after fleeing their state to stall the passage of a restrictive voting rights bill. NBCNews.com senior reporter Jane Tim joins us with the latest on the drama here. So, Jane, the legislators met with Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren and Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock yesterday. What did they talk about?
Joe, they're laser focused on voting rights and voting rights federal legislation. They know that the minute they go back home to Texas, that bill gets passed, the one they oppose. And they also know that redistricting data drops August 16th, and that starts a whole nother battle. So they know that federal legislation is the only way they're going to accomplish their goals. But let's listen a little bit to what Senator Warren had to say about the conversation.
I want to thank them for coming here to remind us in a very personal way how hard people are fighting across this nation to protect access to the vote. Those Texas legislators are here because they understand voting is the beating heart of our democracy. And the Republicans in Texas and Republicans across this country believe that the only way they can hang on to power is by keeping American citizens from voting. That's not how a democracy works, and it's up to us to fight back.
Making it human is absolutely the goal. That's why they're going to be here and be here for weeks.
Yeah, these lawmakers have a highly anticipated meeting today with who else? Senator Joe Manchin, who doesn't want to get rid of the filibuster, making it very hard to pass any of these federal laws on voting rights. What can you tell us about how these Texas Democrats are planning to approach that conversation?
Absolutely. Now, as we remember, this is not their first conversation with the senator's office. They met with him several weeks ago, his office. They couldn't get a meeting with him the first time. But this is a delicate dance. They want to make it very personal. They want to show what they see as their plight, their struggles that they face back home, to make this personal, as Senator Warren said. But it's going to be careful, because what they want is a carve out. Basically, the idea that filibuster rules don't apply to voting legislation like this. But Senator Manchin has shown absolutely no interest in that. So they're going to have to make the case for him to really flip-flop on a dearly held position that the senator has.
I also want to ask you about another election story. This one's in Arizona, a new House Oversight Committee investigation. They're going to look into that controversial Republican-led audit of the 2020 election results in Arizona. Remind us, who's conducting that audit, and what is this committee going to try to figure out? Yeah, so this is going to blow up this whole big audit, but this is the Arizona Maricopa County audit, where third-party contractors were hired by state Senate Republicans to look at those ballots. Now, we've been talking about conspiracy theories that were just ran wild throughout this audit. Bamboo in the ballot, Trump campaign, UV watermarks on some of the ballots that proved fraud. Really controversial stuff, but a lot of secrecy. House Oversight Committee has subpoena power. I can't wait to find out what documents they get released. It'll be interesting, and you'll have to Google bamboo in the ballots if you don't know what that is. All right,
Yes.
Jane, thank you so much.
All right, wildfires in the West have burned through more than 1 million acres of land. The fires are being fueled by relentless heat waves, as we've been telling you about, in the most severe drought seen in years. NBC News correspondent Jake Ward has more.
Good morning, Savannah. Good morning, Joe. You know, here in the West, we've gotten used to the idea that fire season is getting worse, but this season is especially terrible, driven by a combination of conditions and fundamentally caused by climate change. Dozens of wildfires raging out of control in the West.
Gosh, we've had, 3 or 4 fires around here in the last month, and it's kind of getting scary.
2 million people under red flag warnings across 5 states: California, Idaho, Montana, Washington, and Oregon. The Bootleg Fire is the first official mega fire of 2021. It's burned more than 200,000 acres, doubling in size for 4 straight days, now nearly 7 times the size of San Francisco. And drought conditions in 94% of the West are making it all worse.
It has never been this low. It really, truly is unprecedented.
Lake Mead, only a third full, is lower than it's been since the 1930s. It's one of several depleted reservoirs across the Southwest.
Climate change has a very strong fingerprint on exactly what we're seeing right now at Lake Mead.
This weekend, authorities plan to close this boat ramp on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe, citing low water levels and danger to boaters. Without enough water in lakes and reservoirs, vegetation dries out and becomes ready fuel.
It's like a stocked fireplace, tinder packed, ready to go up.
Symptoms of climate change fueling the fires. This fire season is about 6 weeks ahead of schedule. Outbreaks behaving like they typically would in August or even September. Now, these individually would be bad enough. We're talking here about drought, triple-digit, record-breaking temperatures, and extraordinarily dry vegetation. But the fact that they are all converging together to create these terrible fire conditions means this could be a very tough summer. Savannah, Joe?
Yeah, I have a feeling that will be the case. Jake Ward, thank you so much.
With that, let's get a check on your morning news now, weather out west and around the country.
Bill, we said it yesterday, but you've had quite the intro to your segment each day because this news is just crazy and it's not letting up.
Yeah, just wait till I show you the video of the water rescues from the flash flooding in Arizona. But first, we'll talk about the fires, and I'll show you that incredible pictures. So here's the map that shows where all the current fires are right now. Oh, actually, here, we'll show it to you now. This was in Arizona from a flash flood. Oh, I'm going to go backwards. All right, so 65 active large fires out there across the country. We have more than 2 million acres that have burned already. We were showing you and talking about, we saw the amazing satellite picture from that Bootleg fire, just the plume of smoke in that story. That's just north of Klamath Falls. That's the one that's 200,000 acres. There's also the Beckworth Complex fire. Those are the 2 biggest fires burning in the country. That one is just to the northwest of Reno. And that's, again, another mega blaze. But this Bootleg fire is 7 times the size of San Francisco. And it's just very early for a fire this big in the season. It's only at 5% containment right now, too. And as far as today goes, red flag warnings are really what tells firefighters that if a fire forms, it could spread rapidly. And that's going to be the case today in areas of the interior Pacific Northwest. Now let me show you that video. So we've had flash flooding in the last 2 to 3 days in areas of Arizona. And this was in Catalina, Arizona yesterday. This dad was in his car with his 2 daughters, and got stranded in this flash flood. If you notice, the firefighter closest to the vehicle has one of the daughters in the white there in his arms. The dad's on top of the roof with his other daughter. He does safely hand his youngest daughter to the firefighters, and they do slowly walk to shore. When they were in this vehicle, it washed down the road 25 to 50 yards. So they're lucky it didn't flip over. That could have been a deadly and could have been a disaster. I'm sure Mom is very thankful for those firefighters and that rescue there. So, yeah, again, we could see some isolated flash flooding in areas of Arizona today, but it won't be as bad as it was yesterday. But it's that time of year where we get those isolated pop-up storms there in Arizona. But yeah, pretty breathtaking. Imagine being that mom and hearing that story and seeing those pictures.
Yeah. At least they were able to get to the roof, too, to give them a little bit of, make it a little easier to rescue them, too.
Yeah, imagine that. A dad pulling your kids up on top of the roof. Yeah, kudos for him for having a cool head and doing that.
Yeah. That rescue is worth the wait and the back and forth. The video, the map, the video, the map. Thanks, Bill. Susan.
Britney Spears is celebrating after a victory in court. A judge granted her the right to hire her own lawyer. The decision came during Wednesday's conservatorship hearing, during which Spears offered more tearful testimony by phone. She demanded that the court remove her father, Jamie Spears, from the conservatorship and called for him to be charged with conservatorship abuse. Spears said every part of her life was controlled under the conservatorship and that, quote, their goal was to make me feel crazy, and I'm not. The judge granted her request to hire celebrity attorney Matthew Rosengard, who called on Jamie Spears to step down from the conservatorship. Through his attorney, Jamie Spears refused to step down, saying he loves his daughter and he only wants the best for her. After the hearing, the singer took to Instagram to thank her fans for their support, posting a video of her horseback riding and also doing cartwheels.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.